that number has now almost doubled. We're over 6.5 billion. And people say, well, population growth is slowing down. We're only going to add, if we're lucky, another 2.5 billion people. Well, 2.5 billion people is more than there were on the entire planet when I was born. The population situation is bad beyond what any demographer even dreamed of 25 years ago. What about the resource situation in the world? Well, the most important resource to all of us, of course, is food.
When Paul Ehrlich's book, The Population Bomb, came out in late 60s, he was instantly famous. He was instantly controversial.
Sometime in the next 15 years, the end will come. And by the end, I mean an utter breakdown of the capacity of the planet to support humanity.
I'd been a student of Paul Ehrlich's at Stanford. I trusted him and liked him. I bought it completely. It was a global perspective, which was interesting because many of the things that environmentalists were doing up to then were not so global.
You can be absolutely sure that we've had it. Everybody who's looked into the overall population, resource, and environment picture comes up with the same kind of estimate of what would be required if we're to have a 50-50 chance of getting through the next couple of decades with civilization intact.
He grabbed the thorniest thistle of all, which is us, human reproduction. I was totally galvanized. And I went to my dorm room and just sort of blasted out a draft of this speech to deliver at commencement, titled, "The Future is a Cruel Hoax." It was pretty drastic rhetoric. I said, mankind's moved across the face of the earth like a great unthinking, unfeeling cancer, and that the most humane thing for me to do would be to have no children at all. I was a media figure overnight. It was personal. I said, I'm not going to have a child. This is very serious. And I was a woman saying it.
All right.
I went around and gave 80 speeches in a year.
If every student says, I'm not going to have more than 2 children, then within 5 years, the population grows.
Whoa, population.
So the future is in our hands in a very,
The
very...
population.
The pill had just
Explosion.
recently become available. So this is something I can do as an act of conscience.
Birthday now, any day. We gotta take into consideration everything in our life on Earth Day. How our lives are affecting the planet, and our population growth is demanding more resources, and we say we gotta have it.
One of them was that it was basically flat and infinite with no finitude to our resources. And we had very stereotyped ideas of what the Earth looked like from space. You look at all the images that people made before we had the photographs, almost none of them have clouds and weather and climate. There is such a thing as icons, and icons help frame people's thinking. My sense was that a photograph of Earth from space would be different in every possible way from a painting of the Earth from space. In 1966, I took some LSD on a rooftop in San Francisco. I noticed that the buildings of downtown were not parallel to one another. It was as if you were looking with a fisheye lens. They had this slightly divergent quality to them. And so basically I'm mentally elevating myself higher and higher and higher until the horizon closes around me in a circle. What I'm looking at is the surface of a sphere. I was just trying to call forth that reality. And what I thought was, taking my, 100 mics of LSD on a rooftop, I know that I'll just make a button. I come up with a phrasing that I like. Why haven't we seen a photograph of the whole Earth yet? I'll distribute the button through the world and everybody will understand we need to see a photograph of the whole Earth. And when we do, everything will be different. So I printed up a bunch of these buttons and I went around to various universities and sold the buttons for 25 cents a piece. I sent them to Buckminster Fuller and Marshall McLuhan and all those senators and their secretaries that I could find. I sent them to various professionals in NASA and Politburo members in Russia. I just, floated this stuff out there, see what would happen.
At that time, in the late 60s, the whole Earth catalog became kind of the Sears catalog of the Back to the Land generation with this intelligence behind it. Stewart's motto was, "We are as gods, and we might as well get good at it."
The whole Earth catalog had basically appropriate technology as our contribution. Photovoltaic things that you could put on your roof that you would get 12-volt power out of. That was deemed appropriate technology. Putting something in a creek that would pump water was appropriate technology. Geodesic domes and solar equipment. Organic gardening, in that sense, was appropriate technology. People are going back to the land, back to basics, reinvent civilization, get it right this time. And the sense was that one was going to blend with nature.
The idea of going back to the land is to become more capable of providing your own subsistence and to reduce your impact and your complicity in long chains of supply. It was saying our way of life has to change. And I loved all that because it was radical.
By and large, the people who were starting rural communes, people who were going, quote, back to the land in the 1960s and on into the 70s, were pretty much liberal, educated college students. The naivete that was carted from college campuses out to these places in the bush was breathtaking. People try to garden, imagining that they could just put seeds in the ground, or we have a nobody's in charge, put all your money into the pot, kind of social economic environment, and that would crash and burn. The women would leave, and the men would leave soon after. All of us who went out and tried to live together in totally egalitarian mode got over it, because we had our noses rubbed in our fondest fantasies. And it only took us a couple of years. And we did no great harm in the process.
It was tempting to try to throw out everything and start over. I thought about that and tried various efforts at it lived on a commune and thought about simply retreating back to the hills, spent some time in the mountains of Virginia, way up on a mountaintop. None of that seemed to be an answer. The world around us is pretty much the world we're going to have. We're either going to work with that or we're going to lose.
One peculiarity of the counterculture in the 60s was that it was inherently really anti-technology. I think it thought technology came from government, it came from corporations, and we're going back to basics. We don't need technology. Except our hi-fis, of course. And our drugs. And those could be as, the more technically refined those were, the better. But by and large, technology
Back
was
to
supposed to be bad.
the land, back to the land now.
Much of the counterculture
Back
disapproved
to
of the space
the
program.
land. Everybody has a vision and a fantasy.
Wasting money, let's take care of things
Egalitarian
here on Earth
living.
before we leave it.
That's for me.
All of this kind of
Living
rhetoric was
on
out there,
a
except for one guy,
planet
Shocker still,
Earth.
the ocean's guy.
Oh yeah,
He had a
that's
better sense of
our planet
the
of our
spirit of the
birth.
Earth probably than any other service-bound person.
Well, can we do it again? We either live with it or we destroy it in the end. Come on, come
Terrible
on,
things were happening to it.
let's get
So
with
this was
it
you had
now.
to have satellite imagery and
Earth
people
Day,
looking down on the Earth from
hey,
outside
hey.
in order to protect the oceans. They just said, we've got to get out there. We totally identified with it. The whole world identified with it. And the whole world was proud of it. Once you got pride, I learned this in the Army, a whole bunch of things that seemed impossible start to seem not only possible, but let's get on with it. There was a sense of engineering accomplishment, of being able to set a damn near impossible goal, and then just haul off and do it.
As an astronaut, I was really emotionally invested in what was happening with the planet. Being who I was, and not just blasting my little pink body up into space, but being able to look back with my human eyes and my brain and my heart and see this planet below me. To me, technology has clearly both good sides and bad sides. It's how one uses it. Apollo 9 was the first flight that flew the lunar module, and I was the first lunar module pilot. And I